You know the old saying, right? A failure to plan is a plan to fail. Yeah, it's a bit of a cliche, but out in the field, when the sirens are wailing and the smoke is incredibly thick, simply reacting to the chaos gets you killed. Survival out there demands a relentless, uncompromising shift to proactive planning.
Welcome back, operatives, to Volume 2 of our Explainer series. I'll be your tactical instructor today. And look, we're setting aside the basics. We are taking a very serious, intense tone for this one because our core objective is straightforward: keeping you alive in the field. We are transitioning you away from that initial instinct to merely react to an incident and moving you toward proactively planning for, exercising, and ultimately commanding large-scale disasters. Here is your mission briefing roadmap. Number 1, the shift to proactive planning. Number 2, mastering incident command. Number 3, the mass casualty nightmare. Number 4, stress testing with exercises. And number 5, the emergency management life cycle. Mentally prepare yourselves, folks, because we are diving into some extremely heavy life or death realities today.
Okay, Section 1, the shift to proactive planning.
Emergency operations plans, or EOPs, aren't just thrown together on the fly. They follow a really strict 6-step federal process. You start by forming a collaborative team, understanding the situation on the ground, and determining your goals and objectives. Then you move right into plan development, followed by preparation, review, and approval. Finally, you implement and maintain that plan. And here's the kicker: Step 6 connects right back around to Step 1. Planning literally never stops. It's a continuous loop.
So what actually populates that 6-step cycle? Well, it starts with THERA, Threat and Hazard Identification and Risk Assessment. You absolutely must evaluate what specific threats are most likely to hit your area. Maybe it's local flooding in the San Juan Basin, or maybe it's an industrial hazmat leak. You need to know what capabilities you'll need to survive them. Also, plans cannot be written in a vacuum. You have to embrace the whole community concept, which means bringing in private businesses, nonprofits, and disability advocates. And finally, tactical flexibility. A rigid plan will just shatter under pressure. Your plan has to provide a strategic framework while giving the incident commander on the ground the actual freedom to adapt.
Moving right along to Section 2, mastering incident command.
Think of this dynamic like a Y shape. On one branch, you've got civilian volunteers like the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT. On the other branch, you have professional government responders like the local fire department. At the bottom stem, where those two completely different worlds merge, is the Incident Command System, or the ICS framework. This guarantees that when your team establishes a command post, you are speaking the exact same standardized language as the incoming battalion chief. It completely eliminates that deadly jurisdictional friction.
So, how do you practically integrate? First up, the very first CERT member on the scene becomes the incident commander. You hold that command until a more qualified professional arrives and a formal transfer happens. Second, you have to understand your lane. CERT operates strictly under the operations section. That means you do the physical, heavy lifting, the search, rescue, and triage, while the government agencies handle the broader planning and logistics. Finally, you absolutely must establish a dedicated communications pipeline with the local Emergency Operations Center, the EOC. If the city doesn't know what your neighborhood teams are finding out there, you are basically fighting blind. Now, Section 3, and this is where things get really grim: the mass casualty nightmare.
I really need the gravity of this definition to sink in for a moment. A mass casualty incident, or MCI, is declared the exact moment the number of patients exceeds the immediate medical resources available. Picture a massive funnel. At the wide top, you have total chaos and mass victims. Inside that funnel are your filters: triage, treatment, and transport. Down at the narrow spout at the very bottom is the hospital. If triage breaks down, that entire funnel plugs up. The hospital gets completely overwhelmed with minor injuries, while critical patients just bleed out and die on the street.
This brings us to a truly terrifying shift in mindset. In everyday life, the worst injury obviously gets treated first. But an MCI triggers what we call the triage paradox. Resources are strictly, ruthlessly allocated to those with the highest probability of survival. This is the harsh reality of our profession. To save the salvageable, you literally have to walk past the dying. It's an incredibly heavy psychological toll, but if you hesitate to make that call, more people perish. Now, before you even begin to think about those medical operations, you must establish site security. In events like active shooters or bombings, there's almost always the lethal threat of a secondary device or an ongoing active threat. Do not rush blindly into the hot zone. Those secondary devices are designed specifically to kill you, the first responder. And honestly, if you become a casualty, you can't save anyone else. Secure the scene first. Always. Once the scene is finally secure, your very next priority might actually surprise you. It's transportation corridors. In a mass casualty nightmare, traffic control is honestly just as critical as bandages. Think about it. If civilian vehicles block the roads and ambulances physically cannot enter or exit the hot zone, patients are going to die waiting. You have to aggressively command the logistics of that physical space.
Section 4. Stress testing with exercises.
We build up to this preparedness using the Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program, or HSEP. Think of it like a staircase. At the bottom, you have discussion-based exercises, like seminars, which just focus on strategic policy. Then you step up to a tabletop exercise, a TTX, where you talk through the plan in a low-stress room. Only then do you move to operations-based exercises, stepping up to a drill, and finally culminating in a full-scale exercise that requires actual physical deployment of gear and personnel. The golden rule? You never run a full-scale physical drill until you've talked through the strategy at a tabletop first. Listen, I need to hammer this point home. The after-action report, the AAR, is not just some administrative paperwork you file away. It is blood-earned intelligence. The entire point of running an exercise is to expose your weaknesses before they cost actual lives in the real world. If you fail to ruthlessly document those failures and write a concrete improvement plan, your training was entirely useless. It was a complete waste of time and resources.
Finally, Section 5. The Emergency Management Life Cycle. Let's zoom out and look at the overarching philosophy here. We operate in 4 continuous phases. Mitigation, like building a flood wall to stop the disaster before it even happens. Preparedness, stockpiling MREs and training operatives so we're ready. Response, deploying boats right into the flood, which is the actual fight. And recovery, the long, grueling aftermath of rebuilding homes and lives. It is an endless cycle of preventing, preparing, fighting, and rebuilding.
Within this life cycle, there are a few core tenets you absolutely must understand. First up, local control. All incidents are handled at the lowest jurisdiction possible. The federal government doesn't just swoop in and take over, they are there to support the local incident commander. Federal and FEMA relief is legally triggered by the Stafford Act, but only once the president actually declares an emergency. And this coordination perfectly illustrates why emergency management is a unified risk reduction profession. It requires continuous education, strict legal adherence, and a totally unified approach. We aren't just about reacting to the fire. We are about preventing the match from being struck in the first place.
All right, we've covered some genuinely brutal realities today. The harsh math of the triage paradox, the absolute necessity of site security, and the blood-earned intelligence of the after-action report. You now understand the massive shift required to keep yourself and your operatives alive out there. So, I'm going to leave you with this provocative challenge. Are you truly prepared to proactively command the chaos, or will your failure to plan ensure you become a casualty of it? Think on that, study the doctrine, and we'll see you in the next explainer.